if I may. I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Hello and welcome to Broken Entertainment. So I let Ian Malcolm do a little bit of talking there in the beginning because it's very apt for this conversation. And we're talking about AI and this huge debate that has come up around AI art specifically. More so than it has AI narration or AI video generation or any of that stuff. It's almost entirely based around art. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, but we'll get into those later. The thing is, I want to break down the entire conversation because I've not seen anybody do that. I've seen people talk about a specific video or a specific post, but I haven't seen anybody really break it all down. And what you find out when you consume as many videos and posts on this stuff as I have, well over 10 hours worth now, you find out there are effectively three core arguments. So the first argument, and this is three core arguments for AI, but it all kind of revolves around these three. The first argument is you can't own style / it's not theft. And the reason they say it's not theft is because they're saying, well, it's fair use. You can make that argument. You're going to have to make that argument. That argument's going to happen in the courts. But here's the problem with fair use, and we'll go into it in more detail later. The problem with saying it's just fair use is this isn't just about legality. This, for many artists, this is about ethics. And a lot of these people in the AI art community are blowing past ethical concerns. I don't care. It's legal. I can do it. I can sell it. I can spawn it. I can do whatever I want. You can't stop me. It's perfectly legal. Where artists are saying, well, but it's not ethical. And unfortunately, they don't make that argument enough. They focus very heavily on the legalities rather than on the ethics, which is really what's driving some of the artists' anger, is that among artists, what AI art does, which is take a whole bunch of samples of different people's stuff and smash it together, wouldn't do that to another artist normally. If you were making art, you might try to kind of draw from their style because you want to make your own style, but you want to do it kind of like this. You might even do an homage to their style, but you wouldn't just take it. And you wouldn't just take their pictures without talking to them and do whatever the hell you want with it. Now, the AI art people would say, well, what about fan art? Well, fan art is a different scenario. Okay? This is not fan art most of the time. And we're not dealing really with the people who are just kind of, oh, what if the Roman Empire never fell? Or, oh, what if Supergirl used, a gun? We're not talking about the people that just spawn random things. We're talking about the diehards here. The people that are seeking to profit from this. That are seeking to use it to make a product. Because that's where we're going to get to the next core argument here. The other core argument is AI art, when combined with an artist's skill, allows an artist to produce product faster and more efficiently. But artists aren't looking at it as a product. You're having two different conversations almost when this argument comes up. Oh, it's a product. We're going to produce it faster, more efficiently, and the artists are saying, but they don't want to. And the third argument is IP and copyright laws are immoral and should not exist. And therefore, we can do whatever we want because artists are elitists. They're trying to control art. We are democratizing art. We're making it available for everybody. And they don't have to spend all this time working on their art. It's fast. It's quick. They can produce product. And there's that word again. We can produce product faster than if they were trying to be artists in the traditional sense. So you've got a lot of problems with this argument too. And then the artists are coming back at each of these arguments, and you're kind of having the same conversations over and over again. Some of them, in particular, that last core argument, get very, very nasty. And we're going to show you some of the receipts on that as well. But these three core arguments are behind every conversation you see on AI art. And this is specifically from the perspective of the people arguing for AI art. It's fair use, therefore not theft. It allows artists to make product faster and more efficiently, and you can have fewer artists doing a project, which means you're putting artists out of work, but they quietly ignore that, or they celebrate it. We'll show that later too. Or, oh, well, these laws shouldn't exist in the first place, so we're just going to do it anyway. Which is a funny argument, because a lot of the people making this argument are in favor of property rights in every other situation. But when they see the opportunity to profit off of hitting a couple of buttons and stealing the styles and the hard work of other people and standing on their shoulders without the discipline, without learning the respect for the process, for the art itself, for other artists. When they do this, it gets pretty nasty. But usually these same people are for property rights in every other scenario. So these are real problems facing us. So we're going to go through each one of those arguments in detail. I'm going to show you receipts. I'm going to show you video clips from everybody's favorite AI warrior, Shad, from Shadiversity, because he really is hard in the paint for this stuff. We're going to talk about all of that in this video, and I'm going to break down how does it work, and I'm going to let Shad talk about that a little bit coming up, because he does actually have a good video detailing kind of how AI is trained. The unfortunate thing is that he anthropomorphizes AI, and I'll show you later. It essentially says that AI art engines think and create exactly like people, and in some cases better. And we'll show the different processes that people go through. So there's effectively two approaches that exist when making AI art. There's enter the prompt, hit a button. Or there's use an image, hopefully one that they have drawn, feed it into it, combine it with a prompt, go through a process until they get it the way they want it to look, do a bunch of edits outside the AI, feed it back in, etc., etc. And we'll go over that because Shad does that a lot. And I've played with AI a lot myself. I've done these things. I know how all of this is approached. But the worst part to me is the way these conversations are approached by the people pushing AI. You have this post from Shad on Twitter, and you see these same kind of statements over and over again. So this guy says, but the AI model copywriting thing seems to be the thing you're ignoring. And he goes, ignoring? Wow, you have no idea about me, do you? I haven't ignored any arguments. I've tackled them directly. What's actually happening is people are ignoring my arguments because they can't counter them, or are reacting with character attacks, gaslighting, and mockery. Dude, be careful what you say, because you're doing some of the same things. And there are artists who are saying things negatively as well. We won't ignore that. but there's a lot more negativity. These vitriolic posts that are coming from the other side. People aren't ignoring his arguments, they're countering them, and then he ignores the counter or moves the goalposts effectively, and we'll show you that as well. But we'll start. Now we've kind of gone over what's going to happen. We're gonna start from the beginning, how all this works, how the AI's being used, and why artists have such a significant problem with that. So before we can get into the rest of the discourse and talking about some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes, how people are interacting with one another, and the three core arguments and so on, we need to first break down how does an AI image generator work? Because there's a lot of this argument is based around one side saying, well, it's copying a bunch of people's stuff, and the other side saying, well, no, it's totally fair use, and the images aren't even stored in the AI, etc., etc. So we need to understand it and break it down. So there's an article here that breaks down very simply, and then we'll talk about the implications of fair use and copying and the ethics of mining all this data. AI art works on a diffusion model, and it's got this image here, and essentially what it's doing is load in the training data, and it breaks it down first. So they've got this picture, and it adds static and adds static and adds static, and then it rebuilds it in the opposite direction, and in this way it's able to learn. And then when it makes an image, it starts with static and builds from there by taking bits and pieces, but we'll go into this article it's a little clearer. So forward diffusion, adding, and it's comparing it to making a dish. Forward diffusion, adding ingredients to a basic dish. In this stage, the model starts with an original piece of data, such as an image, gradually adds random noise through a series of steps. This is done through a Markov chain, where at each step, the data is altered based on its state in the previous step. The noise that is added is called Gaussian noise, which is a common type of random noise. And then you have training, understanding the tastes of a dish. Here the model learns how the noise added during the forward diffusion alters the data. It maps out the journey from the original data to the noisy version. The aim is to master this journey so well the model can effectively navigate it backward. The model learns to estimate the difference between the original data and the noisy versions at each step, and the objective of training a diffusion model is to master the reverse process. Reverse diffusion, recreating the dish. Once the model is trained, it's time to reverse the process. It takes the noisy data and tries to remove the noise to get back to the original data. This is akin to retracing the steps of the journey, but in the opposite direction. By retracing steps in this opposite direction along the sequence, the model can produce new data that resembles the original. And then finally, generating new data. Finally, the model can use what it learned in the reverse diffusion process to create new information. It starts with random noise, which is likely a messy bunch of pixels. Alongside it takes in a text prompt that guides the model in shaping the noise. The text prompt is like an instruction manual. It tells the model what the final image should look like. As the model iterates through the reverse diffusion steps, it gradually transforms this noise into an image while trying to ensure that the content of the generated image aligns with the text prompt. This is done by minimizing the difference between the features of the generated image and the features that would be expected based on the prompt. This method of learning to add noise and then mastering how to reverse it is what makes a diffusion model capable of generating realistic images, sound, and other bits of data. Neural style transfer is a deep learning application that fuses the content of one image with the style of another to create a brand new piece of art. And here you have Corgi Photo Water Lilies by Claude Monet, and Corgi in the Claude Monet style. So this is essentially what they're doing, is they're taking billions of images and feeding it into the machine and saying, figure out how to do this, right? And once it figures it out, when you enter a prompt, it's taking this information and what it's learned, and it's building back until it has an image. So it's not directly taking an image from the training set and putting it on the screen, but it comes very close a lot of times. especially if something is in there over and over again. So if you have, say, Superman's going to be in there a lot. You have billions of data sets. You're going to have Superman in there 100 zillion times, right? It's going to make Superman looks like. It's not going to be a specific Superman, more than likely, unless that specific Superman is just in the data a lot. So this is how they're kind of getting away with it. They're saying, well, this is not directly taking your work and putting it on the screen, but it's just complicated enough that a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion around it, and that it takes data and it holds it. Whether or not, because people will deny this. They'll say, oh no, that's not stored anywhere. But I've seen signatures in generated content. Those signatures are coming from, so now they're messed up. They don't make any sense. But this is where it gets to be a problem, because the people who support AI are able to use the confusion and the complexity of how this works to say, oh, well, no, it's fair use. I'm not actually directly copying it. I'm making changes. I'm using a style, maybe, but I'm not using your exact picture. The problem is that the fair use argument breaks down. There's 4 components to what makes fair use. And the 4th component is the critical one: effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. Courts review whether and to what extent the unlicensed use harms the existing or future market for the copyright owner's original work. In assessing this factor, courts consider whether the use is hurting the current market for the original work, for example by displacing sales of the original, and or whether the use could cause substantial harm if it were to become widespread. And that's where it falls apart, because if you have people creating Superman, and they're creating Superman in whatever style, and there's tons of people just pumping out AI art of Superman art becomes less valuable. If you take that away from the specific Superman example and you just use art in general, you have people right now, artists get commissioned to do work, and that's their value. But if you have people who are just pumping out images, and you can pump out 10, 20, 100 images at a time, then what is the value of a commissioned piece? What is the value of commissioning an artist when you can just have it pumped out? You don't even need to hire anybody. Just get on an AI prompter and put in what you want. Maybe draw a little something to use as a base model, stick it in, tell it what style you want it in, tell it what you want in a detailed prompt. And this is exactly what Shad has done. He has a video out where he details his process, and he gets Supergirl, and he makes a detailed prompt of he wants this specific style of Supergirl, and he adds a couple of Laura's in and some other stuff to kind of narrow down what he wants. And he goes through images until he sees one that he's like, that's not bad, I could make something out of that. And then he takes that image and he edits it in Photoshop, and he puts it back in, and he generates it again, and then he edits it in Photoshop, and he puts it back in, and he generates it again, and then he edits it in Photoshop, and he puts it back in, and he generates it again, and poof, he has Supergirl art. And that process might take a little time in his case, but a lot of people aren't doing that. And even if they are, you can still take that Supergirl and produce hundreds more Supergirls similar to it. You can produce this art very, very quickly. Might take a couple hours if you want to get more detailed with it, but you can still spit out a ton of it. And what happens is you devalue original art. You devalue the whole process of hiring an artist in the first place. And Shad talks about this, and we'll get into this a little more, about how, oh, well, yeah, you don't need as many artists now to do work, so they can go and do AI, and they can do more work faster. They can produce more product, there's that keyword again, faster. But art, there is a product aspect to it, but it's not a product in the sense of like buying an iPhone. Okay? That's a product. Art is something that takes time, it's something that takes skill and training, and when you strip all that away and you can just pump out images, you have a lot of people who are going to say, you're going to have people who say, no, I want an artist, I'm going to go pay them. But you're going to have a lot of people, and it's already happening. It's already happening in the book cover world, where people are generating AI book covers. And they're just slapping them on self-published books and calling it a day. Did they hire anybody? No. And so now they've done it for free or for almost nothing, instead of hiring a book cover artist. And then you have people that just crank all these out, and they might sell them for a couple bucks. You know, here's 50 book covers for $100 versus, you know, one book cover for a couple $100. You have 50 book covers for $100. So you're devaluing that work. You're doing it by taking work that people have done and cramming it into a mechanical wood chipper and teaching that wood chipper how to make art out of that. And we're having the same thing happen in novel writing, because you have somebody, I've done a video on this before, there are people now who will write a book using an AI program, ChatGPT or whatever, and they'll write 50 books, and they'll just stick them out there, slap an AI cover on it, because he did, AI art cover that he paid nobody for, an AI written book, and he just threw dozens of them out there. So now you're devaluing the work of writers and book cover artists. So the fair use starts to fall apart, because you're saying, oh, it's fair use. I'm changing the data. I'm changing the product, because that's the word they like to use. I'm changing the product. Well, yes, but you're also devaluing the work of everybody you just ripped off. So it begins to come apart. And you're going to see court case after court case after court case on this stuff, as people challenge it, probably on this fourth point. And it gets seedier from there. Another variable in judging fair use is whether or not training data and model have been created by academic researchers and nonprofits. This generally strengthens fair use defenses, and startups know this. For example, Stability AI, the company that distributes Stable Diffusion, didn't directly collect the model's training data or train models behind the software. Instead, it funded and coordinated this work by academics, and the Stable Diffusion model is licensed by a German university. This lets Stability AI turn the model into a commercial service, Dream Studio, while keeping legal distance from its creation. Bio dubbed this practice AI data laundering. He notes this method has been used before with the creation of facial recognition AI software, and points to the case of Megaface, a dataset compiled by researchers from the University of Washington by scraping photos from Flickr. The academic researchers took the data, laundered it, and it was used by commercial companies. Now, he says, this data, including millions of personal pictures, is in the hands of facial recognition firm Clearview AI and law enforcement and the Chinese government. Such tried and tested laundering process will likely help shield the creators of generative. Look, if it's fair use, you don't need to do this. But if you know it can be challenged in court, if you know point 4 is a significant issue, and if you know you can be sued over and over again by people on this point and by people saying, hey, look, I've seen my art stolen and spat out by other people. It just looks a little different. Because it does. No matter what somebody like Shad tells you, if you tell it to put it in somebody's style and you put the prompt specific enough, you will get something very, very similar to what they've already done. That person's work is used by somebody who can't be bothered to take the time to learn to be an artist, to pump out as much stuff as they want. Their style is stolen, their data is distributed and diffused without 1 cent, without recognition, without anything. and they'll claim fair use. And as the argument breaks down, you start to get some really sick arguments on social media, where you're having a lot of people who would normally claim to stand up and defend property rights, saying, "Oh well, IP property rights is ridiculous and should be destroyed anyway." And I've got some examples of that as well. So an artist said, "Feels great to be so hated by people for just creating stuff and not wanting to be exploited for it." And this person responded with, "Thank God for AI art. I want to see more artists begging for money on the streets. We hate you for defending the logic of copyright and intellectual property. Not wanting to be exploited is a good way of saying you're trying to hold on to your petite bourgeois artisan position against the tide or being proletarized. This is a reactionary position. AI art all art will enter the public domain by force. Artistic production will be unshackled. The value of art as a commodity will approach zero. These are all unambiguously good things for artistic freedom and an artistic society. They're just bad for a small class of private artisans." That's the kind of argument. I'm using this as an example, but I've seen it over and over again. As the fair use argument comes up, and as people prod and poke at it, this is the kind of response you get. And I've seen artists say some stuff. I'm not going to pretend that nobody on the artist side has come out and said something they shouldn't have said. But they're doing it from a point of view of, I am being destroyed or threatened, and everything I care about is being strip mined. So yeah, some of them are going to be a little angry. But you cannot sit here and call it fair use, because it will, and already demonstrably is, devalue the art. It devalues the process. It devalues the idea of even hiring an artist in the first place. Shad even said, "AI art will allow me to hire more artists." Not pay an artist more, hire more artists. Why would he be able to hire more artists? Oh, because their work's not valuable anymore. And as their value goes down, yeah, he can hire more artists. So this core three argument of fair use is really just a bludgeon. And it's another one of those things that is not properly or easily understood by a lot of people. And so they use it to bludgeon them into submission or into silence. And they may not understand it themselves. And here's the thing, if you're doubting what I'm saying about the amount of images used. So this article, which is yesterday, a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on artificial intelligence and copyright, Stability AI head of public policy Ben Brooks admitted to using billions of images without asking the copyright owner's consent to train the AI image generator Stable Diffusion. You can argue this, but the fact of the matter is, in any other circumstance, most people would say, yeah, you have to talk to the copyright owner. Put a video out on YouTube and fair use the crap out of it, of somebody else's video. And more than likely, if they're a big studio, you get a copyright claim. But most artists are incapable of doing that. They don't have the funds. They don't have the ability to even see it happening most of the time, unless somebody points it out to them. So the other core argument that ties into this is the productivity argument and kind of the democratization of art, which is, well, now artists, it's twofold. One, artists can produce AI art too, and they can do it better and faster and produce more product and put more product on the market than anybody else because of their artistic ability and their ability to see what is wrong with an image, what needs to be corrected with an image, and so on. The issue here is that most artists can do the same thing in a much shorter amount of time by the time you account for finding an image that even looks right, unless they're going to draw on themselves and put it in. But most artists already know how to do all of that. If you already know how to do it all, you can do an image in a couple of hours. Why go through all the extra steps?
And it took so much additional work
to have something that looks very similar to a lot of other images, because AI art tends to look very samey. And the failure of these AI people to understand is artists aren't necessarily wanting to produce a bunch of product. They're not an assembly line. They have no desire to be an assembly line. And they recognize that by spitting stuff out, they're lowering their own value. And then you have this democratization of art aspect where they say, well, now everybody can do art. Okay, so again, you're devaluing art. If everybody can do something, it's not that valuable. Why does a well-cooked steak cost a lot of money at a steak restaurant? Because a lot of people can't do it. Or they just don't want to take the time. Because it takes a lot of time. But if you remove the time element and you make it so everybody can do it, what's the value now? And what is the human value? Because you're not just reducing the commercial value of something, you're reducing the human value of something by putting out all this art and quote unquote democratizing art, which was always democratic in that sense, because you can always go and buy a pencil and some paper and go watch a bunch of YouTube videos on how to do art and do it. And it costs you nothing but the pencil and the paper and some time. And good, quote unquote, good AI art takes some amount of time. And when you read into somebody like Shad and you watch their videos over and over again like I have, and you see their process, you see quickly that they could just do the art in the same amount of time if they spent all that time that they spend learning to do AI and to do the edits. If they spent that time working on the art themselves, they could do it. This is people, it's democratizing, quote unquote, for people who don't want to put in the work, who don't have the discipline, who don't have maybe the talent. And they want to be able to put out stuff. They want to be able to make a comic or what have you without having to pay anybody and without having to take the time. So you've already got AI art generated, children's books, for example, that people are just putting out because they don't want to hire an artist, they don't want to take the time. And the end result of that is, yes, okay, now that person can do it without spending the money. But does the art look good? No, probably not. And did they learn anything? No. They didn't better themselves as a human. They skipped the steps. They, in the words of Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, they didn't have the discipline. They didn't learn the discipline. They stood on other people's shoulders. They took what they had done and they used it to put in a machine and spit out something for themselves. So now, instead of improving as a person and a human, they've skipped all of that and they've devalued commercially and they've devalued from a social standpoint because the art produced by AI has no soul. It has no driving fact behind its creation because it's just an image. It's just, oh, I just want an image. I just want a picture. Just give me a picture of Supergirl. There's no any of the incalculable things that make a specific picture by a specific person with a specific style have any sort of soul behind it. It's just created in the same way that people creating. So it's hard to quantify soul, right? But we know it when we see it. And it's lacking in AI art. It's immediately, obviously, made by a machine. Even when you take a picture done by somebody by hand and you feed it into the machine and you edit it and blah, 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 it comes out with no soul, with no heart. It removes everything human from the process. It devalues the human character and the human desire to create. And it makes people, and I've seen it personally, it makes people want to stop creating. Because they're like, what's the point? Somebody can just get on their computer and spit out a bunch of pictures, and why am I working hard to do it myself? So yes, you're democratizing art. Congratulations, you've ripped the soul out of it. You've taken everything of value, and you've taken it away so that you can make either a quick buck or so you can just spit out a bunch of images. That's it. That's the honest truth. So I want you to, for a minute, think about this, and I want you to listen to Shad here. You've got a clip from one of his videos where he basically talks about how he really doesn't want to do any of the physical work, and he doesn't really want to improve. He wants to do things faster, because for him, it's not about the art, it's not about the process, it's not about learning, it's not about improving himself, it's about putting out a created piece. That's what he values. That's what he sees as the thing that he came to figure out that he liked. Creating, but not doing it. So go ahead and listen here.
Important to me. Ever since I was a very young child, my imagination would run wild, creating characters and stories and worlds. And art has always been a profoundly important part of me bringing those worlds into greater reality. It started off with drawing, and that's a passion I still have to this day, creating new characters and depicting the worlds and stories I love to immerse myself in. It was a great revelation to me later on in life. It wasn't actually the physical, mechanical movement of drawing that I was actually enjoying, but it was the creation of something. There was some relaxation found in the methodical kind of movements of scraping a pencil along paper, but the true artistic satisfaction was in what I was creating. Otherwise, why wasn't I just drawing straight lines on a single piece of paper forever? But I do understand that there are some people that fall in love with certain mediums, but
So you see this over and over again. The same kind of behavior and attitude. Of, I just want it. Just give it to me. I don't want to work for it. I just want it. And in that video, you saw him, a lot of his hand-drawn stuff. And I don't like a lot of it, but there's a human element to it that disappears once you start looking at the AI stuff. This is his one of his AI art things. Okay, and he put this up on Twitter. And you can see there's not really anything to it. It's just an image. And there's anatomical issues, but it looks like AI art. Once you've seen a lot of AI art, you can see it, and you're just like, that doesn't look like something a person has done. Now, he compares it to this over here. I don't know what this is, but this over here, okay? This is bad art. This looks terrible. This is from a Marvel comic, but it's from a Marvel comic from years ago. No doubt, it looks terrible. But there's still a human aspect to it. It doesn't look good, but there's still something of humanity in it. It doesn't look like it was made by a machine. So yes, you've democratized art. And in doing so, you have catered to people who are... let me show you another example. This is AI. This is something I did when I was just goofing around with Adobe Firefly. And again, there's nothing to it. I felt nothing when I made this. I feel nothing looking at it. Like, there's some interesting ideas, but nothing... It imitates a style. And it does it mechanically, and it does it without any aspect of humanity in it. The mistakes that it makes aren't part of a person drawing. They're part of a machine not quite understanding proportions, or not understanding that the teeth shouldn't just be a giant wall of white. So, what do you have at the end of the day? You devalued the human soul, human desire to create, because you have people leaving creative fields because they no longer want to. You have people being pushed out of creative fields. You have Hollywood using AI to scan people who would normally start work as extras and maybe be able to work their way into something more. Now they don't even get to work as extras. They get scanned, they get fed into a machine, they get used whenever they need to slap in an extra using AI, and the person's never paid or hired again. You have voice actors who are telling people actively don't go into voice acting because you're going to be replaced by a machine. So you're killing people's desire to be creative. So that people who never wanted to do the work can spit something out. You're feeding off of other people's stuff. It's getting a lot worse. And we'll get into the morality. We're going to talk more deeply about the morality later on. I don't want to get too far into it. So we've covered the two of the three core arguments. You have the democratization of art, and you have this idea of fair use. But then you have the third core argument. And the third core argument is I am an artist. So first they devalue you, and then they take your first they take your stuff, then they devalue you. Then they argue that you shouldn't own your own creativity. And then they argue that everybody should have access to the ability to do it because artists are a bunch of elitists who never have to work a day in their life, even though 95% of artists have like at least one job, maybe two or three, because their art doesn't pay the bills. Most authors have a job. You know, that commission of a couple $100, that's like extra spending money. It's not buying them a mansion in Malibu. So now I want you to listen to, we're going to do a couple of clips from some different Shad videos. And I use him, first of all, because I'm subscribed to his channels. I like his sword videos. I used to be thoroughly entertained by him. But more and more, I'm seeing this side of him that is aggressive and almost elitist, and it's very pushy, and it doesn't understand at all what artists are saying, and all he wants to argue is technicalities. So this video originally was conceptualized as like an open letter to Shad, like, look what you're doing. But then as I got more and more into it, I'm like, look at all this stuff on AI. And he happens to be kind of the frontline AI warrior. So I'm using his examples because they're a very good summary of a lot of this without going into a million different Twitter posts and a million different YouTube videos and so on. So I want you to listen to a couple. And first, he hates AI, or sorry, he doesn't hate AI. He hates the process of drawing.
It was a great revelation to me later on in life. It wasn't actually the physical, mechanical movement of drawing that I was actually enjoying, but it was the creation of something. There was some relaxation found in the methodical kind of movements of scraping a pencil along paper, but the true artistic satisfaction was in what I was creating. Otherwise, why wasn't I just drawing straight lines on a single piece of paper forever?
And then he feels artistic satisfaction from what he does with AI art.
To reach this result, that I have, you know, that type of artistic satisfaction that you're talking about, I have that in this image. Not to the level that I think I drew every single bit by hand, but it took such a process to get there.
And he doesn't really care too much about the image he's actually feeding in originally. He's trying to get a mechanic down, but the rest of it's basically the AI.
Drawing. So you hand drew this, you know, you colored it in Photoshop or whatever it is that you use. So this is your art style. And then the very next picture is the AI assist. So the AI took everything. Yes, your pose is there. Okay, the similar pose, but nothing resembles anything you just did with the AI prompts.
Nothing
does.
Nothing, like, because
just
to
the
me,
pose, just the pose that you drew. That's it.
But
everything else, now you got this mapped on, painted, detailed muscles and all this stuff. Yeah, there are errors in there for sure that you're
big errors
you fix.
Well,
and
no,
but there's nothing that resembles one from the other.
So what Shad will tell you in those videos is he's doing most of the work. The AI is helping him fill in the blanks and do the coloring and so on, but he's drawing the initial image, he's doing all this Photoshop editing and feeding it back in. But the issue is that by the time he's done all that, he could be doing it by hand. He's not saving any time, although he says he is. And on the other hand, he'll say, oh, well, I've put a lot of work and time into this. And it's like, well, okay, the AI is so good, you don't have to do anything. Or the AI needs a whole lot of help. And if the AI needs a whole lot of help, then how is it faster? Which is one of the arguments wrapped up within this whole thing. How is it faster if you're taking hours to do it anyway? And so you have him bypassing improving his skill in favor of feeding stuff into a machine so that it does all the work for him. It's why you can tell he doesn't care about art. He wants product. He wants to be able to push something out. He wants to be able to create a comic book, which is his stated goal. He wants to be able to use AI to make artists cheaper so he can hire more of them while not actually doing any of the work himself. And if you look at his statements on when he did art by hand, it's all about, oh, I don't want to take the time. It's hard to do the inking. You could make mistakes, and it took more time. Every time he mentions, and this is, again, I'm using Shad as an example, but you see this time and time again. Every time there was an opportunity to improve, what they actually looked for was an increase in speed and efficiency, because they're not interested in producing the art, they're interested in selling the art. And so you have artists now struggling against people who are devaluing their work because what they want to do is pump out as much of it as they can, as fast as they can, and make money off of it. And now you have the question of, okay, so they're taking in money, they're producing art off of the shoulders of other people, and taking in money and calling themselves artists. And you've seen over and over again, you will see an argument saying IP is not worth it. IP is not real, effectively. And until of course, they produce something using AI, then all of a sudden, oh, I can copyright that. And you see the same thing with Shad. Well, I'm producing fair use, and then I am able to do that, and I am able to copyright it. Well, there's no real creativity in taking somebody else's stuff and fair using it. Okay, fair use is really meant for reviews, it's meant for academic research, and so on and so forth. It's not meant to be used to take art or anything else and use it and manipulate just enough that you can make money off of it. That happens a lot, and it happens even more now that there's AI art issues. That was never its intent. It's a manipulation and abuse of the fair use doctrine, which is in need of updating to avoid something like that. So you have this argument. You have these three core arguments. You have the people doing it who they'll claim, use Shad's words, heaps of artists are out there using AI as a tool, and that it's only a small vocal minority that is complaining about it. I've seen them say I've explored it, but once I found out how it worked and what it was doing, I had no interest in it. So you have this system being used to devalue art, being used to produce things as quickly and efficiently as possible, while also taking a lot of time to produce something for people who don't actually want to create. They want to have a product, but they don't want to actually be part of the process. And one of the things that's really telling when you watch his video where Shad says, I don't like drawing. He says he enjoyed the creative process, but he realized what he actually enjoyed was the end result. And if he simply enjoyed drawing, he could just get enjoyment from scratching lines on paper endlessly. There's a fundamental lack of understanding of what artists actually enjoy about what they do. They don't just enjoy putting lines on paper over and over again. It's like an OCD thing at best. It's not an art thing. Art thing is using your creativity and imagination to come up with something. And then you have this weird humanization of the AI itself by these same people saying, oh, AI is able to create this, and AI has, again using Shad's words, an imagination. It's able to come up with things that people can't come up with, but none of that's actually true.
Where does the AI get the images from?
Specific. And because this is something that I created, something new, in that sense, it's absolutely new. And the AI, because it can combine like understanding of what things look like from multiple different things, it can create stuff new, so much so in ways that the human mind would never have conceived of. Have you seen some of the abstract stuff AI artists spat out
There's some
sometimes?
crazy abstract stuff
It's
out there. Absolutely.
like it's sometimes stuff that no human mind would possibly conceive. Maybe
but
someone,
that has to
it
come.
can create new.
That has to come from somewhere that a human mind did conceive, because
Well,
if it's being fed anything, it can't just create stuff out of thin air. Like there has to be a basis for the AI to take from. So it's taking from, it's got to take from human created things, because
like
we
every
as
person
humans,
does.
we can create from our imagination. We have an
Well, wait,
amazing
wait, wait.
imagination. Our brain is
but
awesome
it requires inputs and references first.
from the
Human
AI.
imagination, no, human imagination. Now I'm talking about in the same way.
Yeah, but you still, regardless of that, it's not a comparative to what the AI does.
It actually is.
The AI is unable to create anything without input from a person. And even then, it's not actually creating. It's taking a bunch of copies and a bunch of bits and pieces of things from here and there and sort of smashing it together in a way that fits a prompt. It can't create anything from whole cloth. And they will say, well, neither do people. People get, they see a cat, and that's how they know how to draw cats. It's true, but people are also able to come up with things on their own. They're able to create things like dragons and fairies and mermaids and stuff that you don't see, but that came up out of mythology anyway. And the machine is only able to do what you tell it to. And up to that point, it's only able to do it to a limited degree. Otherwise, why does it need input from you at all? But of course it does, because all it is a diffusion model that has been fed a whole bunch of images that other people have done, and the ability to reassemble an image out of static. But it's not thinking. It's not forming ideas. It's not coming up with ideas as it goes and saying, oh, I should draw it a little bit more like this, and I should do a little more like this. It's just assembling an image from a bazillion other images that it already has. And what you see in a lot of the models is they tell you, oh, well, there's billions of images, so you're not going to get exact copies of people's art. You're not going to get signatures and so on. Even though you clearly get signatures. And I will show you that right here. This is something that I did a long time ago when I was sort of figuring out how all this worked. And what do you see right here? A signature. Actually, looks like two signatures that have been kind of messed with a little bit by the AI. But those are signatures. They exist within the data. You cannot diffuse something with signatures and not be able to reassemble signatures. Now, they might be screwed up, but this tells you how it's working. It's pulling from other people's stuff. And here's another signature. I didn't even see this one before. It's pulling from other people's stuff. There's nothing about it that is inherent to the person creating the image. Even if they input an image of their own drawing, it's really taking a very basic amount and then filling in all the rest and completely changes it. And you can see that in Shad's video where he's debating against Joe, where he shows a piece that he's doing, and it does it for a specific pose. It changes the color, it changes the way the armor looks, it changes the details on the shirt, it changes the feet, and then the belt, and then he has to do it again, and it changes some other stuff, and it changes. There's nothing there but the pose. There's nothing inherent to the creator using the AI, but there are things inherent, signatures, from the people whose information was fed into the machine. And the machine, in a lot of models, is not fed billions of images. It's fed a much smaller sample size. And when you give it a smaller sample size, you start getting actual copies of images. And that's what you're seeing here. Somebody drew something very similar to this, and the machine spat it out, and it screwed it up. You know, the hands are messed up. There's like 3 capes, you know, and this weird artifact here. But this is not the ideal of fair use. This is somebody's work. It's signed 3 times. This is multiple somebody's works. They've been smashed together. There's nothing inherent. There's nothing of me in this image. There's nothing that I created. I told the AI I want these parameters. It gave it to me. I ran it through a whole bunch of different filters and reruns. Ran it through a whole bunch of times to get it to even where it's at now. And this is not my character. This is elements of other people's characters, but I didn't create this. This was not my idea. This was the AI. It wasn't a humanized AI thinking thoughts and coming up with... AI does not, I'm sorry, Shad, have an imagination. It does not. It's not creative. It's not capable of coming up with new ideas. It's simply able to smash bits together until you get something vaguely resembling what you put in. And you can tell that so much by feeding an image into it to do it, and seeing that image completely changed. And that's how you can see these. That's how you can see these arguments falling apart, because they start saying conflicting things. They say, "Oh, AI is super smart, it's super cool, it can create and imagine things that people are incapable of imagining or creating on their own." And then at the same time, they'll tell you, "Oh, it's just a tool, it's just a machine, you just put in information and then you do all the work." So either it imagines things or it doesn't. Either it can create things or it can't. You can't have both ends of the spectrum. You cannot be saying, on the one hand, this is able to create things out of the scope of the human mind, and on the other hand say, it's just a tool like Photoshop. It's not. Photoshop does not use other people's work so that somebody without the skill or dedication or interest in being good at their craft can profit. That's not what Photoshop does. And you'll also see them render it down to, oh, it's just like pendulum art, where you just set up a machine and then you tell it what to do and it does it. Okay, if that's true, how does it have imagination? How is it creating? And how is it that you're saying, oh no, you see, it doesn't do all the work, I do a bunch of the work. Okay, if you do most of the work, how is it just a simple machine? Pendulum art you set up and then physics does the rest. Putting a prompt in is not the same thing. It's not a complicated process. No matter how much people tell you, oh, prompting is a skill, it's not. It's not that hard. You just have to understand how the words work and what the machine is looking for. And you can watch any number of tutorial videos on YouTube to figure that out. So we're kind of getting into the moral aspect. And I really want to save that for a little bit later still. Because it's important to understand these arguments are circular. They say one thing, and then when that gets pushed against, they say another thing, and that opposes the thing they've already said. And they're humanizing the machine. They're humanizing the AI, saying, oh, the AI is capable of doing all this amazing stuff. And it's thinking, it's creating, it's imagining. Human imagination is not a machine. Human imagination is not, oh, I've seen cats, therefore I draw cats. While a human may not have been able to create a cat, exactly a cat, without seeing one, we have created all kinds of interesting stuff over time that we have never seen. There might be elements, you say a dragon, well, people have seen reptiles. Well, yes, but that's not A reptile does not look like a dragon. Dragon is its own thing. A mermaid is its own thing that may at most have been inspired by something, but is radically different from the thing that inspired it. We don't have to see a bunch of things and then put them out. And at the same time, they'll also say, well, the AI learns just like people, because people learn by not copying but imitating different styles, and by drawing from other people's work and tracing from other people's work and using it to learn. And yes, people do that. That is how one of the ways you learn art is to do that sort of thing. But then they move on. The machine cannot move on. It cannot form its own unique style by merging different things, or by having things that may have initially been flaws and then saying, you know, I actually kind of like this. I think I want to draw it this way. That's not something it's capable of doing. That is the inherent human soul that the AI simply cannot replicate. It is not learning like humans. It is simply diffusing an object over and over again until it vaguely has an idea of how to smash it back together. So let's get into the moral stuff surrounding all of this, because, and I'm aware that this is an engagement happening on social media, but as I said, this is largely where everything happens in this particular debate, because the average person doesn't care enough to really even get involved. They don't care how any of this is framed. They think it's funny to make silly pictures using AI, or to see what AI might imagine when they type in certain things. Not that it actually imagines anything, but that's kind of the vocabulary people use. Most people are a little bit cautious. They're concerned that we're letting technology kind of get ahead of us, and a lot of people don't really have a clue how AI works in general. And that's all fine. No, I don't expect or think that everybody's going to know everything about every subject, obviously. However, this debate between artists and the people that are pushing AI is a really kind of gross debate. And it makes you, if you're sitting on the sidelines but observing, it makes you immediately kind of lean towards the artists. Because the arguments, we've gone over the arguments, but those arguments are supported and intermingled with these kind of statements, and we'll go over a few here. So this one here, after spending the first 10 minutes of bullshit come out of that dude's mouth on Shad's recent debate, I've decided to put it on record that I am going to make a comic book, and it will be using AI. I don't care if it takes me another decade. I'm going to make it just to spite those jumped up, fart-sniffing, pompous assholes. See, these debates, video debates, between Shad and various artists have all been civil. And to see this come out, and then Shad saying, do it. To see this come out, and you're like, what? You know, I've watched the debate video. What are you talking about? Most of these people aren't being elitists at all, but they're being treated that way of artists. So artists are these pompous elitist jerks, and they want to charge like $1 million gazillion for the simplest picture, and they have no interest in anything but gatekeeping and keeping me from being an artist by using AI. Most artists are not wealthy. Most artists don't actually support themselves purely off their art. But this is the behavior you get. So then we have, I will bet my last dollar they didn't shed a tear in any other field of progression. They don't want to use it, perfectly fine. They enjoy what they want, but we'll enjoy what we want. And he says, some nonsensical stuff that doesn't matter. And then this person says, don't let snobs gatekeep your outlets or creativity. Getting real, and then he replies with, getting real tired of this childish elitist mentality. The only childish mentality that comes out of any of this is coming almost exclusively from the people supporting AI art, which makes it very hard to consider their point of view. You're not going to convince artists by treating them like jerks. And this is where you immediately get into this moral stuff surrounding AI, and there's lots of moral problems with it. But it starts with the people pushing the message. They're aggressive, they're argumentative, they're oftentimes mean-spirited, sometimes they're downright cruel. And when you see that around something, you kind of take a step back and wonder, well, if that's what's pushing it, what am I looking at? And then this guy points out that an AI guy, he says, AI bro who complains his prompts and code are being stolen, turns around and steals from me to train on an AI on my work. He also blocked me immediately after posting this. How can these people claim to be in the right when they're maliciously weaponizing AI against artists? And the post that he is quoting, if you think that was a theft machine, it's not. I'll show you a real one. Check out this portfolio I'm going to copy in 5 minutes. So the guy just goes in and copies this entire artist portfolio and uses it for himself. And you're trying to tell me that AI is not stealing, AI is not a threat to artists, but then you have this kind of behavior, and it's not a minority of the people who are pushing AI art. A lot of them behave this way. And I've got specific examples. I have more I could go over, but I don't want to spend all week going over them. Then there are two responses I'd like to make here. For one, commissioning is a business model and not inherently connected to the process of art. If I tell a commissioner what to do, that doesn't make it less my art or more theirs. It's a mix that varies based on input. If I told you what I wanted for every stroke, is that me using you as a tool? How many decisions does the artist have to make for it to be their art? Well, if a person is making something using entirely their skills and abilities, it's their art, regardless. Your input as a commissioner is not making it your art. AI art is very much the same, tweaks, decisions, or more so, and iterations. See, this is the kind of argument you get, right? Oh, it's just the same as commissioning art. Because, and their explanation always changes. Oh, it's just the same as using Photoshop. Oh, it's just the same as using a camera. Oh, it's just the same as using a pendulum. Oh, it's just the same as being a commissioner. Well, okay, are you an artist or are you not? You're commissioning work. That makes you a commissioner, not an artist. If you're an AI artist and you're arguing that AI art is commissioning art, but you have input and decisions in it, that doesn't make you an artist. That would make you a commissioner of art. But because they're backtracking and saying and arguing, oh well, it does, because when I commission a normal art piece from an artist, that's my art too. It's not. You've provided some guidelines. The same with the AI. You provide it some guidelines, it does all the work, you claim it as yours. You've put no physical effort, no mental, emotional, spiritual effort into making the work. Put it into a machine, you hit a button, and maybe you go and you make edits and you put it back in, and then you make edits and you put it back in. Those edits are still not the same as making art, either with your hands or with a camera or with digital art, because those all take a level of creative ability and instinct and skill. And although Shad and others will argue, oh, AI art requires skill to put in the prompts and know how to use prompts. No, prompts are really simple to use. Not hard at all. Takes zero effort. All you have to do is learn which words affect it. It's not hard at all. And as far as doing the edits, you're just editing. You're editing mistakes that a program is making because you can't be bothered to learn how to do something that you're spending an equal amount of time editing that you would learning and doing if you just did it. So they go on. As to the part about taking others' art, that argument falls flat when you take away the societal concepts of ownership or just base it on synthetic data. If an AI model trains on another AI model's set, is it then taking copyrighted material? No. Let me back up. Depends what you mean by AI model set. If you're talking about an AI model being trained on another AI model that is using copyrighted data, then yes, that's what it's doing. It's using copyrighted data. It doesn't matter how many iterations of program you put between that and what you're doing. You're still taking that data. Whether you take it through 6 other programs or not doesn't matter. Now, if you're talking about training an AI using purely AI-generated images, that gets a lot weirder. And that's where you get into the issue of the courts not really having decided on any of this yet. Is my drawing something I can train it on and then keep iterating infinitely until it makes the Mona Lisa? That's what? That's a nonsensical argument. But the part that's really disturbing and hypocritical that I see over and over again, I'm using examples. The argument falls flat when you take away the societal concepts of ownership. These people almost exclusively will tell you they believe in property rights right up until you talk about AI art. All of a sudden, they'll tell you IP and everything else related to property of an intellectual sort is junk. They'll tell you copyright should be illegal, that IP shouldn't be a thing. But you turn around and talk about taking their farmland away or their car away or what have you, things change. You turn around and you say, well, okay, I'm going to take away that you don't own Star Wars as a fan, so people can do whatever they want, therefore the sequel trilogy is right. That gets a different backlash too. So I said earlier that I'm not going to go into the articles talking about the use of this software to create child images, but there are other issues going on as well. And here's one of those. I've complained about all the identity theft over on Civet AI before. Now they're literally featuring and encouraging bounties for non-consensually replicating people. And I think we all know the reason why. Why is no one doing anything about this? So then, in greater detail, Civet AI, an online marketing for sharing AI models that enables the creation of non-consensual sexual images of real people, has introduced a new feature that allows users to post bounties. These bounties allow users to ask the community to create AI models that generate images of specific styles, compositions, or real people, and reward the best AI model that does so with a virtual currency users can buy with real money. As is common on the site, many of the bounties posted to Civet AI since the feature was launched are focused on recreating the likeness of celebrities and social media influencers, almost exclusively women. 404 Media has seen at least one bounty for a private person who has no significant public online presence. I'm very afraid of what this can become. For years I've been facing problems with the misuse of my image. This has certainly never crossed my mind. Michelle Alves, an Instagram influencer who has a bounty, told 404 Media. I don't know what measures I could take since the internet seems like a place out of control. The only thing I think about is how it could affect me mentally because this is beyond hurtful. So, there's already laws in place for a lot of this. They're just going to have to be applied. And Congress and the presidency and the court system are notoriously slow on new technologies, so it's going to take forever before it gets actually applied. But the issue here that I want to bring focus to is AI, and we're specifically talking about AI art here. AI art has not brought anything good to society, to art, to the internet. It has brought a lot of theft of people's intellectual property. It has brought a lot of horrifying discussions where people say terrible things to other people all the time. And it has not educated people. It has not bettered people. It has not improved the arts. It has not funded anything of value, but it's creating a lot of this dark stuff. So at the end of the day, it's difficult for me to understand how somebody like Shad or anybody else can just ignore this and go out and say how amazing AI art is. Forgetting the other arguments for a moment, forgetting the quality and so on. This is the basis on which you build your program. It's built on theft, but it's also built on doing this kind of thing. There's a ton of programs out there to do this. It's not even that difficult, because that's the whole point of these programs, is that it's not difficult. So if this is what your system is based on, why are you supporting it? It only brings to mind the one conclusion that I can make. Most of the people who are out there actively pushing AI art programs are doing so simply because it benefits them. They don't care about the rest of this stuff. They intentionally avoid looking into this stuff. They say, well, that's a bad actor. And I agree that you don't want to take an object or a program and say, well, this is bad because it's being used to do bad things. But in this case, it's never being used to do good things. It has not improved anything. It has not brought value to anything. Then they're pushing it because it helps them and because they have to win the argument. If they don't win the argument, then their ability to create and flood the market with low quality imitations of other people's work, their ability to say, I'm going to hire fewer artists and pay them less to do my books and to do these comics, their ability to go out there and generate things off of the work of other people and profit from it, goes away. If the courts and society turn against them. And it's society, they can't argue it in the courts, but they can argue it in society. And by pushing it and pushing it and pushing it in society, they're hoping to get that kind of traction where people either ignore the courts or kind of move them in the direction of not overturning AI art, or not putting down a lot of, AI art's not going to go anywhere, but the courts could easily cause a lot of problems for it. They could easily put a lot of limitations on it. And if they start doing that, then their ability to do this stuff, to create a cheap little image and feed it into a machine and get the machine to do the hard work, and that's for the ones that are putting effort into it, that goes away. So what you're left with is, if you're ignoring or fighting against the negative connotations, the negative foundation of this programming, then why? Why get in the argument in the first place? Why not just quietly sit? Because I see this asked over and over again, and just why does somebody like Shad, who has over 1 million followers, go out there and push really hard on this a lot? Why does he have a whole new channel dedicated to that? Why does he go out on Twitter periodically and do that, when he could just quietly do it? Well, because if you quietly do it, then you have no control over the battle. And if you have no control over the battle, and the courts slam down on it, you've lost your ability to control art for your purposes. If they do that, they can't do what they want to do. So it's very much a form of activism, not activision. It's very much a form of activism, because it's about, I need this program so that I can do the things that I want to do, so that I can go out there and make money. It willfully arguing against or ignoring things like the theft of people's intellectual property, pretending you don't care about property rights, telling artists that they're elitists and they're gatekeepers, saying that you're democratizing art. That's all there to control the fight in the public sphere, because the public, the vast majority of the public, is ill-informed on the subject and may or may not even care. And if you're loud enough in favor of it, public support can go in that direction, or companies can go in that direction, which we're starting to see. Companies starting to adopt AI programs on varying levels, including at Disney, because they think it's acceptable. It's essentially taking from the playbook of the radical, for lack of a better term, social justice warriors, cancellation people who, since 2016 roughly, have been pushing this cultural encroachment into entertainment, where they say, no, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to check this box and this box and this box, you have to have a sensitivity reader, you have to have people that tell you you're wrong, you have to have people that you have to have this kind of character and this kind of character and this kind of character, and you have to have two women in a room and they can't talk about a man, and so on and so forth. All of this same playbook, because they were using that playbook and it worked for a long time. Where do you think the Bud Lights came from? Where do you think the Disneys came from? Where do you think all of this entertainment stuff came from? Hollywood and major corporations saw how loud this group was on Twitter. And because these companies are dumb and they think that Twitter is the be-all, end-all of social commentary, they said, oh, we gotta cater to these people and we'll make money. And they got extra funding for it, but that's a whole other conversation. And they went out and they hired these people as well. Let's go produce stuff. Let's turn everything into activism. I can talk. So now you have these guys going out doing the same thing, being as loud and obnoxious and consistent as possible, where they say the same messages over and over again, where they hit every YouTube video, every Twitter post, every article that they can comment on. If it's negative about AI, they come in, they flock in out of the woods, and they hit it. And they argue, and they say terrible things, and they post over and over and over, and they recycle their posts with each other. It's the same exact strategy used by the very people they fight against, because they saw that it worked. And if you can turn the average Joe to not care enough, or to think, oh, AI is harmless, and if you can turn the companies into saying, oh, look, people are very accepting of AI, I should go out and use it because it's cheaper and there won't be a pushback except from, this small group of people that we're going to replace anyway. So that's why, if you ignore all this stuff, that's why they're standing on this hill pushing this stuff, because they have to win that battle, or they lose the ability to use the AI art program easily, freely, and to produce stuff that they can go out and say is theirs. And they can put their watermark on, and they can put their stamp on, and they can put it in a book, and they can put it in a comic, and they can put it on a cover, and they can push it out there, and they can sell and sell and sell and sell at the lowest price they can come up with. And you crash the system, because they want to make money. They want to get in there and get money. I've covered on this channel before, and he's far from the only one, a quote-unquote author who used AI to write a book, to make the covers of the book, and he pumps out books at a rate even Brandon Sanderson can't come up with. And he puts them out there, and he's made like $3,000 on it. Because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about writing a good book. He even says that the flaws in the book created by the AI, because AI is very bad at writing, are just part of the charm of the book. Well, it's part of the world building. What world building? So these people are out there doing this stuff because if they lose, they can't do what they want. Don't go out there and see these arguments and go, why are they having this? Why are they pushing so hard? This is why. Why are they ignoring the negative? This is why. Why somebody with 1 million followers on YouTube pushes and pushes and pushes for something that is at best tertiary to what his channel is about. I'm sorry, there is no moral foundation to stand on. It is one thing to go out there and say, I'm going to play around with it, whatever. But selling it, putting your stamp on it, show you something. This is a piece of art done by an actual artist and then copied by somebody using AI. And the person using the AI stamped their watermark on it and went so far as to say that it's theirs. This is what you're dealing with. When you do that, when you say, I'm going to write a comic and I'm going to use AI to do the art, or I'm going to use AI mostly to do the art, and then I'm going to hire an artist, but I'm not going to pay them very much, and it's going to be more artists. See, that's Shad's argument, right? Oh, I'm going to hire more artists than I ever have. Well, yeah, because you're going to pay them less. There's no moral argument. There's no foundation to stand on that is solid. AI art programs do no good at all. They're taking, if you're not mad when you find out that they're taking your family photos and feeding them into a database that gets used to make porn, I don't know what to tell you. And that's the thing. These databases are totally unchecked and completely uncontrolled. And they just go out there and they take 1 billion images. And you really think out of 1 billion images off the internet, all of those are going to be innocent? And then they create software that has few to no limitations on it. And they get surprised when this stuff gets made, and then they don't do anything about it. All the companies making AI art programs have no moral grounds to stand on. To see somebody like Shad push the way that they do is disgusting. I'm sorry. It's gross. And he talks about, oh, I can do this. And again, I'm picking on Shad a little bit, but I'm picking on Shad because he's the front. He makes all the classic arguments. And I know he would say, oh, well, you can't blame AI for what these people are doing. You wouldn't blame a photographer or you wouldn't blame a camera for what it's doing. Well, no, because the camera's gone and been used for societal good. But if the only thing something produces is evil at worst and morally questionable at best, if the only thing something produces is to degrade society and degrade the value of human creation, then where is the justifiability of it? Where do you say, oh, that's okay, yeah, sometimes it gets used to do horrible things, but that's just bad actors. Well, if the whole foundation of it is bad actors, where's the argument? Let me know if you've encountered any of this. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications so you can get latest videos. And if you like the video, please hit the like button. And please let me know where you stand on all this and how you feel about it. And if you're an artist and you've encountered this kind of behavior. And ultimately, if you're a creator, keep creating. Human art will always have value. Your creativity will always have value to you personally and to others. Go out there and create. Be aware of this stuff, but go out and make things. And if you're one of these people who's pushing AI art, understand where these artists are coming from. Stop for a minute. Stop arguing and just listen and understand that these are not people who are at the top of the food chain. And think about the impact you might have on that. And really take a critical look at it. Let me know what you think. and I will see you next time.